Okay, so have you ever had this thought, like, you want a motorcycle that can really move, something that can just carve corners, like it's nothing, but you also want a bike that you can commute on, that you could take on like a weekend trip, without feeling like you've been through the ringer.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's a pretty common feeling among riders wanting both the thrill and something that can handle daily life.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting challenge for the people who make these bikes, trying to find that sweet spot.
For sure. And if that sounds familiar, well, you're in the right place. This is the deep dive. And we're going deep on the 2025 Aprilia Tuono 660 today.
Ooh, this should be good. We've got a review here that really goes in depth on this middleweight naked bike and seems like it's got a lot to offer. So let's dig in.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to cut through all the fluff and give you the important stuff. What are the key features? How does it actually perform? Can you ride it every day? By the end, you'll know if the Tuono 660 is the bike for you. So let's start with first impressions.
The review talks about this idea of a perfect blend of power, agility, and tech right off the bat. It says that this bike is built for an exciting ride, advanced technology, and everyday usability. What stands out to you there?
That everyday usability definitely catches my eye. Often with these high-performance bikes, practicality kind of takes a back seat. But this review keeps saying performance and practicality together, and, it makes you curious about that aggressive styling, lightweight chassis, and race-inspired DNA. It sounds like Aprilia is trying to make a bike that's exciting like a race bike, but won't kill your back after a quick trip to the store.
Right. It's about the whole experience, not just speed, but how it feels, how much control you have,
Yeah.
how well it adapts to different riding situations.
All right, let's get to the heart of it, the engine. This thing's got a 659cc parallel twin, and the review says it makes something like 100 horsepower at 10,500 RPM and about 67 newton meters of torque at 8,500 RPM. They even call it one of the most powerful bikes in its class. That's a big statement.
Yeah, definitely. Those are really solid numbers for a middleweight naked bike. The parallel twin engine is interesting too because they're known for having good torque in the lower RPM range compared to like an inline four. So you get that instant power when you need it for everyday riding and quick acceleration.
Speaking of speed, I noticed something. The review says the top speed is around 135 miles per hour, but later on in the FAQs, they say it's about 150 miles per hour. That's a big difference. Why do you think that is?
That could be because of different ways they tested it, or maybe they were being a bit conservative at first. Maybe 135 is more like what you'd normally get, while 150 is the absolute max in perfect conditions. Either way, that's still a lot of speed for this kind of bike.
What really caught my attention was how much they talk about the power to weight ratio. They say it's a big reason why the ride is so exciting and dynamic. We know how much power it has, but how does that work with the weight to make it feel so good?
Oh, that's a great question. A good power-to-weight ratio means the engine doesn't have to work as hard to move the bike.
Hmm.
It's like imagine a super powerful engine in a really heavy car versus a slightly less powerful engine in a much lighter car. The lighter one will feel faster and more agile. So the Tuono 660's lightweight chassis, which we'll talk about more soon, is a big part of making that power-to-weight ratio work so well. It makes the bike feel really responsive and eager to go.
Okay, so power is definitely important. Now, how about handling? The review says the lightweight aluminum chassis is key to the sharp handling and excellent stability. That sounds like the best of both worlds for a performance bike.
Exactly. Choosing aluminum for the frame is a smart move. Compared to steel frames that you often see in this class, aluminum is stronger for its weight. So the frame can be lighter and stiffer. Less weight, especially in the wheels and suspension, makes steering quicker and more responsive, and the stiffness helps the bike feel more stable, especially when you're leaning into turns.
And they've clearly paid a lot of attention to the suspension, too. They say it has 41 millimeter USD adjustable front forks and a monoshock in the back with adjustable preload and rebound. So for people who aren't suspension experts, what does all that adjustability actually do?
Okay, so those USD or upside-down forks are a design that you see a lot in performance bikes. They're stiffer, which gives you more control when you're braking hard or leaned over in a corner. And the fact that both the front and rear suspension are adjustable is really cool. Preload lets you change how much the suspension sags, basically how high the bike sits when you're on it, and if you're carrying a passenger or luggage. Rebound controls how fast the suspension comes back up after it goes down over a bump. So with all these adjustments, you can really fine-tune the bike's handling to match your weight, your riding style, and the road conditions. The review says it has a balance between sporty yet comfortable ride for both aggressive cornering and daily commuting, and that's exactly what you get with adjustable suspension.
They also mentioned a dry weight of about 183 kilograms, which is like 403 pounds, and a wheelbase of 370 millimeters. How do those numbers factor into the agility?
That low weight is a big reason why the bike is so easy to move.
Hmm.
It takes less effort to lean into corners, accelerate, and brake. It just feels more nimble and easier to handle whether you're in tight city streets or on winding roads. And that wheelbase at 370 millimeters is on the shorter side for this class. A shorter wheelbase usually means quicker turning and a more responsive feel, although it can sometimes make a bike feel a bit less stable at really high speeds.
Ah.
But the review says it has excellent stability, so it sounds like Aprilia has balanced the geometry and weight distribution well to make sure the bike isn't too twitchy.
So it's lightweight and has well thought out dimensions. Now let's move on to the tech and rider aids, which seem like a big deal on modern motorcycles. The Tuono 660 sounds loaded.
Oh, it definitely is. The electronics package is pretty impressive. It's got multiple riding modes, Sport, Rain, Road, Custom, and even 2 for the track. So you can really change how the bike feels and responds to match different riding conditions and your own preferences.
And it's not just different modes, right? They mention adjustable traction control, which stops the rear wheel from spinning out wheelie control, which manages how much the front wheel comes up, and cornering ABS, which sounds way better than regular anti-lock brakes.
Yeah, cornering ADS is a big step forward for motorcycle safety. Regular ABS stops your wheels from locking up when you brake in a straight line. But cornering ABS uses sensors to know how much the bike is leaning over, so it can control the braking more effectively even when you're in a turn. It gives you more braking power and control in situations where regular ABS might not work as well. It's a big safety boost, especially if you like pushing it in corners.
It's also got a full-color 5-inch TFT display, which I guess shows you all the important info in a modern way. A ride-by-wire throttle for precise power delivery, and you can even get a quick shifter so you can change gears without using the clutch. Sounds like a very advanced cockpit.
For sure. The TFT display is a high-tech way to control all those settings and see your riding data. Ride-by-wire is crucial for all those different riding modes because it lets the computer control the throttle perfectly based on the mode you've chosen. And a quick shifter, while it's often seen on sport bikes, can make riding in general smoother and faster because gear changes are so much quicker.
And the tech goes beyond just the bike itself, right? They mention Bluetooth, so you can connect your phone, which means you can get navigation and even handle calls on the screen. Plus, there's a 6-axis IMU. For those of us who aren't tech wizards, what does that thing do?
So the 6-axis inertial measurement unit, or IMU, is like the bike's inner ear. It uses gyroscopes and accelerometers to keep track of the bike's lean angle pitch, which is how much the front or back is lifting, and yaw, which is how much it's turning. It's always collecting this really detailed information about the bike's position and movement, and then it feeds that information into the electronic rider aids like traction control, wheelie control, and cornering ABS. So these systems can react much more intelligently and smoothly based on exactly what the bike is doing. It's a big improvement over simpler systems that don't have that real-time data.
So it's like the bike has its own super advanced awareness system. That's pretty cool. Now let's talk about the looks and feel. Design and rider comfort are really important too.
Absolutely. You can have all the performance and tech in the world, but if the bike is uncomfortable to ride or you just don't like how it looks, it's not going to be a good fit. The review says the Tuono 660 takes its styling cues from the bigger, more powerful Tuono V4 with its sharp front-fairing bold LED headlights and aerodynamic winglets. Sounds like it's got that aggressive, sporty Aprilia look.
And they go on to say it has a muscular fuel tank exposed frame and sporty tail section. It makes it sound ready for action.
Yeah, and what's cool is that even though it's so sporty, they say that Aprilia has also paid attention to ergonomics. The upright handlebars, slightly rear-set foot pegs, and a well-padded seat make it sound like the riding position is engaging and gives you good control without being so extreme that it's uncomfortable for longer rides or commuting. They're really trying to find that balance again between sporty and practical.
That 820mm seat height sounds like it'll work for a lot of riders, especially since there's an adjustable option. That's always good because seat height can make a big difference in how confident and comfortable you feel, especially when you're stopping and starting.
Definitely. Seat height is super important for a lot of riders. Having that adjustable option and maybe a slimmer middle section on the bike, although they don't specifically mention that, that makes it easier for more people to feel comfortable and in control.
And for longer rides, it's nice that the windscreen offering decent protection. It's not a full touring fairing, but any bit of wind protection helps at higher speeds to reduce fatigue. And the fact that the subframe supports luggage means you could strap on some bags for a weekend trip, which adds to that everyday usability we've been talking about.
For sure. Those are good design choices that make the Tuono 660 more versatile than just a track bike. Being able to add luggage means you can use it for more than just short fun rides.
So it sounds like a bike that you could really live with day to day. Now let's talk practicality. What about fuel economy? How often will you be stopping for gas?
The review says it gets about 50 miles per gallon or 21 kilometers per liter. With a 15-liter fuel tank, which is about 4 gallons, it should have a decent range, as they say. So you won't be constantly looking for gas stations on longer rides, which is definitely practical.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good for a bike with this much performance. You're not going to get the fuel economy of a smaller, less powerful bike, but it doesn't sound like a gas guzzler either. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the good stuff, but the review is good about pointing out some potential drawbacks too. What are some of those?
One thing they mentioned is that the firmer suspension might be less forgiving on rough roads. That's often the trade-off with sporty suspension. It gives you great control and feedback on smooth pavement, but it can feel a bit harsh, and you feel more of the bumps when the road isn't perfect.
They also mentioned that it could be more expensive than some competitors, and in the middleweight naked bike market, which is a really competitive price, is always a factor.
Definitely. Aprilia is a premium European brand, and their bikes are usually priced accordingly. The Tuono 660 has a lot of tech and performance, but there might be other bikes in the same class that are cheaper, even if they don't have as many features or high-end parts.
Another point is the limited wind protection at high speeds, which is pretty typical for naked bikes. You're more exposed to the wind without a big fairing, which can get tiring on long rides at high speed.
Right, that's the trade-off with the naked bike style. The little windscreen helps a bit, but it's not going to be like a full fairing on a sport touring bike. So if you do a lot of highway riding, that's something to think about.
And lastly, they say the Tuono 660 is possibly not ideal for complete beginners. That power and sporty handling might be too much for someone who's just starting out.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Even though the Tuono 660 aims for balance, it's still a performance bike with a responsive engine and quick handling. A brand new rider might find it overwhelming and would probably be better off with something less powerful and more forgiving to start with.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of the key specs just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure. The engine is a 659cc parallel twin, making between 95 and 100 horsepower and about 67 newton meters of torque. It's got a 6-speed transmission with an assistant slipper clutch and an optional quick shifter.
For suspension, it has those adjustable Kayaba upside-down forks in the front and an adjustable monoshock in the rear. Braking is handled by dual 320mm discs up front and a single 220mm disc in the back with that fancy cornering ABS. It comes with Michelin Road 5 tires, which have a good reputation for grip, and it weighs about 183 kilograms dry.
Yep. And the seat height is 820 millimeters. So overall, you're looking at a well-equipped and fairly lightweight middleweight motorcycle.
Now, we mentioned that the review has an FAQ section. Let's go over some of those frequently asked questions.
All right. The top speed is confirmed at around 150 miles per hour or 240 kilometers per hour. They confirm the power output at 95 horsepower and the weight at about 183 kilograms or 403 pounds. They emphasize that the ergonomics are comfortable enough for longer rides and highlight all the advanced technology again.
Fuel capacity is 15 liters. They list the color options as Ace of Spades, Storm Green, and Lava Red, and they say again that the Tuono 660 is probably better suited for intermediate riders rather than beginners. The price is around $10,000, but that can change depending on where you are and any extra options you get.
That FAQ is really helpful for clearing up some of the common questions people might have.
So after all this, what's the main takeaway for our listeners about the 2025 Aprilia Tuono 660?
I think the big takeaway is that the 2025 Aprilia Tuono 660 looks like a really strong contender in the middleweight naked bike category. It seems like they've managed to combine a powerful and exciting engine with agile handling, a whole bunch of modern electronic rider aids, and a sharp, distinctive design. And they've really focused on balancing that performance with practical features for everyday riding. So it seems like Aprilia has tried to make a bike that's fun for weekend rides, but also easy to live with day to day.
It does sound like they've hit that sweet spot, the thrill of a performance bike without sacrificing comfort and usability.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a bare bones track bike, and it's not a basic commuter either. It's somewhere in between, giving you a taste of high performance in a package that's still pretty accessible and enjoyable for different types of riding.
So you, our listeners, have now gotten a pretty detailed look at the 2025 Aprilia Tuono 660. So think about this. What part of that balance between performance and practicality speak to you the most? Is it that powerful engine, all the cool tech, the comfort for longer rides, or maybe the sleek Italian styling? And maybe more importantly, what other parts of this type of motorcycle do you want to learn more about now?